Hello, this is Ashley. I wanted to record a special introduction to this week's episode. And in this week's episode, I'm talking about square three of the change cycle and how lots of times you'll be taking action and then mistakes will happen and you learn from them and you keep going. And appropriately, when I was recording this episode, a little pop-up when I started recording in Zoom came up, but in true Ashley fashion, I did not read it and I just kind of X'd out of it. And what that pop-up was telling me is that it wasn't suppressing background noise, which I'm not sure when it stopped doing that because I've recorded my podcast episodes in Zoom this whole time and I don't remember it ever giving me a pop-up. It just automatically suppressed the background noise. So during the episode, you'll hear two things. One being that my dog was barking, and then also there was kind of a loud machine that was driving by that you can hear in the recording. And one of the things that I have made a commitment to with this podcast is that I generally don't re-record. I'm not editing. I want it to be real and relatable to everyone who listens in. So I have made the choice not to re-record that episode and to leave that in, especially because the whole episode is about making mistakes, which I would consider that to be a bit of a mistake, but I'm calling myself out on it. Read the pop-ups, I guess, that come up. Don't just X out of them, and it's real. And I have made an effort then to go into Zoom and make sure that the background suppression noise is on. Sometimes I'll make an effort to actually go and turn that off if I want some other sounds. Like I have a healing bowl. So one of my episodes, I recorded the healing bowl and I wanted that noise to be present in the recording, and that doesn't come up when that suppression is there. So, anyway, that's that. This is my intro, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode of the Creatively Curious podcast. Welcome back to the Creatively Curious podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walter. In this week's episode, I'll be talking about square three of the change cycle. In my previous two episodes, I touched on square one and square two of the change cycle, and square one being death and rebirth. And the mantra there is, I don't know what the heck is going on, and that's okay. And square two is dreaming and scheming. And the mantra there is, there are no rules, and that's okay. So if you missed those episodes, please go back and take a listen to those. And square three is the hero's saga. And the mantra here is, this is much harder than I expected, and that's okay. And so, likening the change cycle to the change of a caterpillar into the butterfly, in square three, this is when the butterfly is fully formed in the chrysalis or the cocoon, and it's starting to come out of the cocoon. And it's struggling and it takes its time and it's working really hard to get out of that chrysalis. And interestingly, if a person were to help the butterfly to get out of that cocoon, if you were to, maybe pull some of the cocoon back or in any sort of way help the butterfly, it actually likely would die. And on the other side of that is, the harder it works to get out of the chrysalis, the more it has to struggle, the longer that butterfly likely will live and the stronger it is. So the point being that no one can really help us get through. Well, I shouldn't say no one can help us get through the stage, but it's, in a way, we have to go through this struggle ourselves. We have to tap into what's right for us, what our authentic selves want, instead of like listening to culture or listening to somebody else's advice. It's really, really important that we're doing what's right and best for us. So in square three, we've, dreamed and schemed. So we have our plans, we have our dreams. And then in this stage, we take action. So we set those plans into motion, taking little turtle steps, taking big steps if you want, and basically trying things and failing. And so some things that I hear from coaching clients, and I even heard it again today, was basically how do I know I'm not going to make a mistake? And the truth of the matter is you don't. So basically, what's best is to get into motion, whatever that looks like to you. And, taking from the Creative Visionary program, it's taking small steps regularly and consistently. And again, I feel like a broken record is that can be applied to anything in our lives. So that applies here too. So just small steps. And in the Martha Beck training, we even called it like turtle steps. So what is like the smallest thing you could do on, your worst day? If you're really tired, or, you're not feeling that motivated, what's the smallest thing you could do? And that still is moving you forward into motion. And that's the important piece. And then if you do fail, or, you move forward and that wasn't the best move for whatever it is that you're doing, then learn from that. And Sarah Blakely, I always remember this quote, is she talks about, Sarah Blakely is the founder of Spanx, a really, really huge successful company. And she said her dad at the supper table would actually ask them what they failed at that day. And the point being that if they weren't failing, then they weren't trying new things. They weren't challenging themselves. And so I think it's helpful to refrain what failing is, or even what making a mistake is, because it's all learning and it can all support our growth and our movement forward. And I know I've talked about this as far as paintings go. Like sometimes I think a layer that I've made in a painting seems like a mistake, but then when more layers get put on top of that layer, they work together and it really wasn't a mistake. Or maybe I did learn that I didn't really like that color, I didn't like how it reacted with other colors. So there's just always learning there. And another good actually resource for that kind of reframing, challenging ourselves, feeling like maybe we're making a mistake, is the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. It's a really, really good overview and sort of details on how like parents, teachers, all of us can reframe sort of speaking to each other about what it feels like to have something feel hard. And that actually, she uses an example of art, that we think that certain people are artists, certain people have this special skill to make them artists, and it's just a bunch of garbage. It's, if that's something that's interesting to you, then you work at it and you work at it, you work at it, you work at it. And the more that you work at it, and maybe you read a special book or you take some classes and you learn from a teacher, then the better at it that you will get. And the same is true of anything. She also gives another example of Michael Jordan, who didn't, I could be getting my details wrong here, but didn't make the college basketball team that he wanted to. He got cut in high school even from the basketball team, but he worked at it. And that's what lots of people will say about Michael Jordan, is that he was like just such a hard worker, very focused, and became one of the best basketball players that we've known. Some people could argue that, I guess, but he had to work at it. He didn't have some special ability or special skills. He worked his butt off. And he learned from his mistakes, and he saw where he could improve, and he worked in those areas. So This is square three. This is square three. And uh, a special note too in square three is that we'll probably have to be really kind to ourselves and gentle with ourselves when it feels like maybe we're making a whole bunch of mistakes over and over and over and over. Is how can we be kind to ourselves? How can that kindness and that gentleness show up for us daily? Because no one else is going to show up to provide that for us. So we need to do that for ourselves. So what does that look like? I covered kind of some of that, and you might feel like you're going back to square one with a bunch of things that you've tried and they didn't work. And so you kind of have to grieve that. And then you have more dreams and more plans to bring those dreams to fruition. So basically, a couple things to remember in the squares: to remember that things will go wrong, and that's okay. It's not a sign that you're down the wrong path. It's just these things happen. Be willing to start over. So every time there's something that fails, then just learn from that and see where you'd like to take it in a different direction. Maybe you need to seek out some advice from someone who's done it before you. All of that. Like just be willing and open and curious about where your next step will be. So revisit stage 2. So that's the dreaming and scheming. And just see what other things you can think of that could be better for you. And persist. So keep at it, keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. It's called a hero's journey for a reason. And I do believe that persistence pays off. Isn't that the phrase? That if you want something badly enough, then, you work at it. Now, work, like, I do feel like it should also feel like play and should feel fulfilling and nurturing. And, we have this kind of concept in society that you got to work hard and you just push forward and all of that. So I think I'd like to change that narrative. I don't think it has to feel that way. Martha Beck talks about work being like if you were a professional soccer player. So you are working hard at that, practicing, you're working really hard during a game, but it doesn't really feel like work. It feels like play. You're enjoying yourself. Otherwise, I don't think people would do it. Creativity is that way for me. I feel like coaching is that way for me as well, that it doesn't feel like this grind. And I think if we could change that belief that what we're working on feels hard, like a big grind, then things would be different. And so same thing with Michael Jordan. Like, he is working hard, but he's also loving what he does. So maybe we need a different word for work, but just something to think about. So that's stage 3. And yeah, there's lots of starting, revisiting plans, going back to square 1, going back to square 2, and then hopefully at some point you will move on to stage 4. And I will talk about that in a different podcast episode, my next episode. And if you have any questions about the change cycle, then please let me know. And if you like this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to it. And I'll talk to you next time on the Creatively Curious podcast. Take care.